Alright, part 4 of the budget fresh level 60 breeding guide for raid pals. So now we're getting somewhere, a little bit more difficulty than just the ones we've been doing before. This strategy is very similar to Blazamut Ryu from the previous version, now it's Ryu Ultra, but it's still these 15 Paladius fresh caught using Holy Burst, Absolute Frost and Spear Thrust. But you will notice that I now have 3 Jet Dragons in my party. Those become relevant a little bit later. You'll also need the pal pods that are spread around the base. 15 pal pods, 1 for each raid pal, seems roughly decent for them. Rio doesn't really destroy pal pods the same way Libro does. You don't really need to worry about them being lit on fire. Another option instead of Jet Dragon in the party would be a normal Blazamut, but I just had Jet Dragon and it seemed to work. So the point of having these Jet Dragons in the party is that if you try to deploy a fresh caught rescue pal against Rio Ultra, it will probably die. They are pretty fragile against Rio Ultra. But if you have it as a party pal, raid bosses don't attack party pals. He might accidentally hit it with a like random area of effect skill, but in general, they don't attack the party pal. So you take your Jet Dragons, you set your pal to do not attack, and instead of attacking, it will walk around the base rescuing pals. And Jet Dragon is a very fast rescue pal. It is the fastest rescue pal. The reason I use Rio in most of my videos against Xenoloord and stuff is because Rio doesn't get lit on fire. You can also use the regular Blazamut, you don't have to use Rio. But using a fire pal to rescue is probably a little bit better. But having this party Jet Dragon means that you can switch to another Jet Dragon. I have 3 Jet Dragons in my party. And you can see right there, it's just flying around rescuing these, rescuing the Paladius as they get low. And then when it's not working anymore, it tends to get in your way. So then you can just recall it. There are a couple of annoying factors with this strategy when using this plasma cannon. Again, I am just using white gear for the purpose of this series. But I really recommend that you farm yourself a guided or a multi-guided missile launcher, just so you can sort of bend those missiles above your pals. And these big ice chunks from Absolute Frost also tend to block a lot of shots. And then the Jet Dragon itself, I think you'll see me when I use this tactic, I jump, and that's just to get Jet Dragon to jump, because he jumps very high, and then you can shoot. Otherwise you just withdraw the pal. And you might also want to put some healing potions on your Jet Dragon, and then you switch Jet Dragons when one gets low. So this seems to be the best way of tackling these raid bosses that will just kill your party pal. If this or not the party pal, the base pal, if this Jet Dragon had been assigned to the base with combat turned off, it would probably have died very early in the fight. But instead, using it as a party pal seems to work. So it's a little bit of a sacrifice from not using Asher Main. So you can see Jet Dragon wants to be in the way, recall it. Or not Asher Main, Asherobe. I keep mixing those two up. So if you had used Asherobe, you would have dealt super effective damage against Rio. And here's another neat little thing. Sometimes he focuses on a pal that has been in the pal bed, and he bugs out a little bit. So the pal or the pal pod strategy seems to mess a little bit with the boss AI, like their pathing. So you get a couple of seconds of free shots. You can take that opportunity to reset pals in the pal box. If some of the incapacitated pals end up outside the base radius, they won't get rescued. So sometimes they also bug out in the beds themselves. So this tactic, while it is very strong, it is not bug free. There are a couple of bugs involved in it. Triple jump boots to dodge those comet strikes is also good. So you can see that Paladius that he's looking at right there, it's alive, but it's bugged out, so it looks dead. It's a common bug that happens in bases as well. Yeah, I think you'll probably see it a couple of times in your playthroughs. But then you can just reset your pals in the pal box once you notice that you have a couple of them that are bugged out and stuck in the beds without being alive, even if they have full health. So just take the time to reset. You really want to manage your shields for that, so when you see that your shields are full, you go and use the pal box. If you don't have shields, I really don't suggest that you go to the pal box. It is pretty dangerous to go to the pal box and reset pals, because if you remove all the pals, the boss will focus you. That's a reasonable thing to assume. The attacks again is just Absolute Frost and Holy Burst. Holy Burst is again like 90% of the damage your pals are doing against Ryu. He's very weak to Holy Burst. Absolute Frost is just happens to be nice that Paladius learns it by itself as well. It's a little bit of added benefit. And here's some like tactic that I've been practicing to dodge the Magna Crush. That you grapple like that and use the boots to get away. But you need to be careful that you don't get too far away from the base, because then he will just Magna Crush again and keep doing that. Whoops, I think I accidentally hit the mic. I'll mute that part if it made a loud noise. So, like if he uses Magna Crush again and again, your pals tend to group up right where he wants to land. And this was a terrible switch by me. I shouldn't have done that switch. But since I have a rescue pal, I don't mind so much, but you probably don't want to do a pal swap and start messing with the pal box when there's a thunderstorm on top of you. So that was a bad play, but I still wanted to upload this because it shows that with this tactic you don't need to be perfect. You can make a couple of mistakes, you can miss shots. A lot of my shots are being like blocked by Absolute Frost and stuff. I'm missing quite a few shots. I feel like when using the plasma cannon, the hitbox of his main is a little bit weird. If you hit the back of the head, like I guess it's a main or his hair, whatever you want to call it, sometimes the shots don't register. I had a little bit of a similar thing with Libero and Xenoloord, where you kind of need to figure out which part of the boss you are allowed to shoot. There are a couple of strong points where you get gray damage instead of white damage, and then there's the headshot for the red damage effect. So you want to kind of learn where you can and can't shoot with the plasma cannon. With the multi-guided missile launcher, you don't have to aim. You just aim at the sky. So it's a bit, probably a bit overpowered. The multi-guided missile launcher removes a lot of the skill requirement from these raids. But it's also very nice, especially if you're using Vermintide Ignis. So here I mess it up, I think. Yeah, I grappled back. So as I said before, I'm trying to grapple back to not force another Magna Crush. This is a tactic that I need to practice a little bit. To use this grapple triple jump boots to dodge Magna Crush. You can get pretty good at it probably. You should probably stand on like one end of the base and grapple like across the pal box to the other side. Probably the best way to not get super far away. And then in phase 2, once you feel like you've rescued enough pals with the Jet Dragon, you can always switch back and forth again. You switch to your Gildane. Here I'm just trying to save the Gildane, because I think it was going for me. I'm not sure if it would have one-shot the Gildane, but it's probably safest to just do it this way. You can also use the grapple when mounted to instantly withdraw a pal. Like if you switch to grapple and grapple the ground here, Gildane would have been withdrawn. It's a little bit better than jumping off. And then you can see that you kind of need to jump to shoot over those Absolute Frosts. So overall, this is like the stage of the raids when you need the Palpod rescue strategy. And if you're not condensing or anything, you probably need to keep your party pal doing it. I guess you could have used like a Blazamut or something here, but if it's uncondensed and doesn't have like good passives and stuff, no souls, it's probably gonna die pretty quickly. And then you start needing to rescue your rescue pals and keeping a lot of them around. So I feel like keeping a Jet Dragon in the party is probably the best play for this. So Ryu Ultra with just fresh caught pals with this tactic is possible. If you kill it, you can see that the beds are burning, but they don't like burn out during this 10-minute fight. But you do want to switch to a water pal immediately after the fight is over. Just send out all the water pals you have ready for it, and they will put out those fires. So you don't lose that precious hexalite and circuit boards and stuff. And then you see Gildane goes down. That's why we have a second Gildane, similar to the part 1, 2, 3. If you are doing this uncondensed stuff, the mount will probably die. Otherwise, if you have a good mount that is tanky, you just keep 4 Gobfins instead, or 3 and a Jet Dragon. It depends a little bit on how much you decide yourself to buff up this strategy. I mentioned it in the previous part, but if this is the first part you're watching, this is like the minimum amount required, but it's not what I recommend that you do. I do recommend that you put some souls on these pals, because you can always reset souls. I recommend that you use some sort of schematic weapon and armor, preferably the multi-guided, to to avoid these absolute frosts. All these pals have the food buff, it's max research, it's max player damage, but it's still just very minimal setup. So there are a lot of easy ways with minimum effort required. So this one almost times out. There's only a few seconds left on this fight. So you probably do want to add a couple of souls and use a better weapon. But this is the minimum setup required for this raid. So you can see it's a rescue jet dragon, or I think I had 3 rescue jet dragons. I had 2 Gildanes, so 1 backup Gildane in case the first one dies. And no Asherobe for phase 1, because there's no high level Asherobe. But you could probably just catch a couple of Asherobes and give them some Exile Scrolls or kill a Predator Pal for a better phase 1 DPS build. And then you can always keep a jet dragon to rescue pals as a backup. But for now, thanks for watching.